We went so many times in this palace, but never enter that room. Every time we run near the master's bedroom, we hear chains dragging metal moans. And deep down we know, if we enter that room, we will never come back alive. But how did we end up in this situation? Well, let me explain. It all happened in the early 1990s when Marie, Ben, and I were university students. We lived in a quiet rural village, far from everything. And even though it was small, there was one place that stood out among the rest, an old abandoned palace. It was huge and creepy, and locals claimed it was haunted. The palace had been abandoned for more than 500 years after the royal family vanished without a trace. The only remaining inhabitants were ghosts, or so they say. And one day we decided to check it out for ourselves. So we all met up at the entrance and stepped inside. At first glance, it looked like any other abandoned building, dusty and full of cobwebs. But as we explored further, we realized this was no ordinary place. The walls whispered stories of a bygone era, and the flickering shadows danced around us like phantoms from another world. Marie was also there, and she wasn't alone. She brought along her adorable Persian cat, a fluffy ball of cuteness named Mittens. The cat rubbed against our legs, purring loudly, and for a moment we forgot about the eerie atmosphere around us. Mitten seemed happy to be exploring the palace with us. As we ventured deeper into the palace grounds, the air grew colder and darker. An oppressive silence hung in the air, broken only by the sound of our own footsteps echoing through the empty halls. It felt like we were being watched, like unseen eyes following our every move. Just then, a sudden gust of wind slammed a door shut somewhere behind us, and we all jumped in fright. Despite the creepy atmosphere, Marie was determined to lighten the mood. She reached out to stroke Mittens, but the usually friendly cat suddenly let out a piercing scream and darted away, hiding under a nearby table. Marie and Ben exchanged nervous glances. What had scared the cat? Was there really a ghost in this abandoned palace? Or maybe the cat was just skittish. But Mitten's sudden reaction had definitely added to the eerie vibe. We decided to press on, hoping to find some answers in the palace's dusty archives. But as we turned to leave, we heard a strange noise, a low growl that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end, and I could unshake the feeling that we were not alone. We spent hours searching for answers in the palace's archives, but found nothing but decaying documents and crumbling books. As the sun began to set, we knew it was time to go. But before we left, we decided to pay one last visit to the archives. Maybe we'd missed something. But as we stepped inside, the room was filled with swirling mist, and the air grew heavy with the scent of decay. Then we saw it, an old leather-bound book lying on one of the tables. I opened the book. A chill ran down my spine. The pages were filled with strange symbols and incantations. Suddenly, the room grew colder and the candles flickered wildly. And then we heard a voice, a raspy whisper that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Leave this place at once," it hissed. "You are not welcome here." We all screamed and ran for the door, stumbling over each other in our haste to escape. As I burst through the door and into the courtyard, I could hear the book slamming shut behind me. We didn't stop running until we were far away from the palace, the sound of our own breathing gradually replacing the whispers of the ghost. That night, I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning in my bed, replaying the events of the day in my mind. I tried to convince myself it was all just a dream, but the memory of that raspy voice echoed in my ears. Meanwhile, Marie's cat Mittens refused to eat or drink. Trembling constantly and hiding in the darkest corners of the house, we were worried sick. Could the ghost have put a curse on the poor animal, or was there another explanation? The next day, we all met up again, but I could tell Marie was hesitant to return to the palace. Despite her fear, she knew she had to face her cat's condition. Perhaps the ghost had cursed her pet. And if so, the only way to break the curse was to confront it head-on. As we approached the palace, its looming presence seemed to mock us, daring us to enter its cursed grounds. But we were determined to help Mittens, and nothing would stand in our way. Once inside, we went straight to the archives, where we'd found the haunted book. But the room was empty, and the book was gone. Had the ghost taken it back? Just then, we heard a crash and rushed to the courtyard, where we found Ben kneeling beside an old lamp he picked up. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," he kept repeating, tears streaming down his face. The beautiful ceramic lamp was shattered at his feet, and the air crackled with energy. Suddenly, the room filled with thick white mist, and the sky outside darkened ominously, as if the very heavens were in turmoil. The temperature dropped dramatically, and we huddled together for warmth, and then we saw him. He was an old man dressed in a long flowing robe. His face was pale and gaunt, his eyes dark and accusing. The sight of the ghost sent shivers down our spines. In an instant, the room grew cold, so cold that we could see our breath in the air. Ben, still kneeling, stammered an apology, explaining that he had broken the lamp accidentally. But the ghost paid no heed to his words. His gaze was fixed on Marie's cat, who was hiding behind Marie, trembling violently. The man took a step forward, and his voice, like the scraping of metal on stone, echoed through the room. "So you bring your cat to mock me," he hissed. Tears welled up in Marie's eyes as she shook her head frantically. "No, it's not like that," she cried. She didn't mean to. But the man was not listening. He continued to stare at Mittens, his expression softening slightly. "You remind me of my own cat," he whispered, his voice strangely gentle now. "I lost her long ago. I haven't seen a cat since." Marie felt a surge of sympathy for the lonely man. She knew he meant no harm. All he wanted was a little companionship. Without hesitation, she gently lifted Mittens over her head and walked toward the apparition. "Here," she said softly, "you can hold her." The man reached out a trembling hand and stroked Mittens' fur. A look of pure joy spread across his face. "Oh, thank you," he murmured. "I've waited so long for this." Then, as if sensing the shift in the atmosphere, the man's demeanor suddenly changed. His eyes narrowed and his voice turned cold and hard. "Remember," he said, "this place holds both good and evil. Tread carefully, lest you become trapped here forever." With that warning, he vanished, leaving us in the eerie silence of the abandoned palace. Before we knew it, the sun had dipped below the horizon, plunging the courtyard into darkness. The man's words echoed in my ears, a reminder of the dangers that lurked within these ancient walls. We hurried home, eager to escape the clutches of the night and the secrets it held. But the next morning, curiosity got the better of us, and we returned to the palace. The air was thick with anticipation as we searched for the room the ghost had mentioned. We found it, but it was locked. But then, as if by magic, the door creaked open, and what we saw inside sent a jolt of fear through our bodies. Sitting in the corner was a headless man in a long coat. His presence was so real, so tangible, that we couldn't help but scream. We fled, the image of the headless man seared into our minds. When we told the old man what we had seen, he nodded somberly. "That room is forbidden," he said, his voice grave. "Never go in there. It's the source of much pain and sorrow." We respected his wishes and stayed away from that room, but we kept visiting the palace. Haunted by the tragic spirit of the old man, the headless man in the corner became a haunting reminder of the price of curiosity, and we learned that some mysteries are best left unsolved. We never entered that room again, but sometimes when we sit outside the palace, we can still hear chains dragging metal moans. And deep down, we know if we enter that room, we will never come back alive.